"She's yours," Marcus said, pushing Lydia forward by the small of her back. His voice didn't even crack. He said it the way someone returns a borrowed jacket. "She's yours. Take her." The underground poker room went dead silent. 14 men sat around a green felt table littered with ash, bourbon glasses, and towers of cash. The air was thick with cigar smoke and the sour smell of sweat-soaked desperation. Every single one of them stopped breathing at the same time. Lydia Babcock stood frozen in her powder blue waitress uniform, the serving tray still balanced in her trembling hands. 2 untouched glasses of Hennessy sat on the tray, the amber liquid shivering with each pulse of her heartbeat. She had taken another shift at the underground game to pay off the last $1,200 on their wedding catering deposit. Their wedding. The one scheduled for 16 days from now. "Marcus," she whispered. Her voice was so small it barely made it past her own lips. "Marcus." "What did you just say?" He didn't look at her. He was already reaching across the table, his fingers clawing at a thick fan of $100 bills with the kind of greedy, manic hunger she had seen 1,000 times, but always made excuses for. His hands were shaking, not from guilt, from excitement. He had just erased $400,000 of gambling debt in 4 words. "She's yours. Take her." The man sitting at the head of the table stood up slowly. Kah Chul. Every person in that room knew the name. Every person in that city's underground knew the name. He was the head of the Korean syndicate that controlled everything from the dockyards to the diamond district. He was the kind of man whose enemies didn't go missing. They were simply never mentioned again. He was a man made of sharp angles and tailored darkness, strikingly handsome, in a way that made you forget, for one dangerous second, what he was capable of. His perfectly styled dark hair fell slightly over his forehead. A stark black tattoo climbed the side of his neck, disappearing beneath the unbuttoned collar of his black dress shirt, a visual signature of the underworld empire, hiding beneath the $10,000 suit. He didn't look at the money Marcus was now frantically stuffing into his jacket pockets. He didn't look at the other men shifting nervously in their leather chairs. His intense, unreadable dark eyes locked onto Lydia, and they did not move. Lydia's legs buckled. The serving tray slipped. The 2 glasses of Hennessy shattered against the marble floor, and the sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot. She staggered backward, her heel catching on the carpet, and her back hit the wall behind her. She pressed her palms flat against it, as if the wall could swallow her whole and take her somewhere, anywhere that wasn't this room. "Marcus," she said again, louder this time, her voice breaking into something raw and desperate. "Marcus, look at me. Look at me." He didn't. He was already counting the bills. His lips moved silently, as his thumb flicked through each $100. $100. $200. $300. He was counting the price of her life, and he was smiling. Kah Chul stepped around the table. 14 men flinched. 2 of his bodyguards moved to flank him, but he raised one hand without looking, and they stopped like trained wolves. He crossed the room in 5 slow, deliberate steps, each one echoing off the marble, until he was standing directly in front of Lydia. She pressed harder into the wall. Her chest heaved. Her wide brown eyes stared up at him with the kind of terror that lives in the body. Not the mind, the kind that makes your vision blur and your fingers go numb. She was shaking so violently, the collar of her blue uniform was vibrating against her throat. This was it. This was the moment her life ended. Not with a bullet, not with a blade, but with her own fiancé's voice still ringing in her ears. "She's yours. Take her." Kah Chul looked down at her. His jaw was set like granite. His expression revealed nothing. No cruelty, no amusement, no pity. Just that same intense, unreadable focus, as if he were studying something precious behind museum glass. Then he did something no one in that room expected. He reached up not toward her, but toward his own shoulders. Slowly, he slid his perfectly tailored black suit jacket off his broad frame. The silk lining whispered against his dress shirt. And then, gently, with a care that made every armed man in that room hold his breath, he draped the jacket over Lydia's shivering shoulders. The jacket swallowed her. It smelled like sandalwood and something darker, like leather and gunpowder. The weight of it pressed down on her small frame, warm from his body heat. It didn't feel like a cage. It felt, impossibly, like a shield. He leaned in close, not threatening, close enough that only she could hear him. "The debt is settled," Kah Chul murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her chest. "She's coming with me." He straightened up, turned his back on Marcus, and walked toward the door. He didn't grab Lydia's arm. He didn't drag her. He simply walked, and two of his men gently flanked her on either side, guiding her forward with a strange, almost reverent distance, as if she were made of glass. Marcus finally looked up from his money. His face was flushed. His eyes darted between Lydia and the door. For one flickering second, one tiny, pathetic second, something that might have been guilt crossed his face. Then he stuffed the last bill into his jacket and reached for someone else's bourbon. Lydia looked over her shoulder one final time as the heavy oak doors began to close. She saw Marcus raise the stolen glass to his lips. She saw the green felt table, the scattered poker chips, the haze of cigar smoke curling under the low-hanging lights. She saw the world she thought she knew, the man she thought loved her, the future she thought was waiting collapse into a single, suffocating image. Her fiancé drinking to celebrate the night he sold her. The doors shut. The last thing she heard was laughter. Outside, the night air hit her like a wall of ice. A black armored SUV idled at the curb, its engine purring like a predator at rest. One of Kah Chul's men opened the rear door. Kah Chul paused at the vehicle and looked back at her. In the amber glow of the streetlight, his sharp features softened for just a fraction of a second. It was so brief, she almost missed it. "Get in," he said. Not a command. An offer. The kind of offer that comes with no good options and no way back. Lydia pulled his jacket tighter around her shoulders, stepped off the curb, and climbed into the darkness of the SUV. She didn't know where he was taking her. She didn't know what he wanted from her. She didn't know that in 16 days, instead of walking down an aisle toward the man who destroyed her, she would be standing in a fortified estate, helping the most dangerous man in the city dismantle a betrayal far bigger than her own. She didn't know any of that yet. All she knew, in that moment, was that the man who was supposed to love her had just traded her life for a stack of cash, and the man the whole city feared had covered her shoulders and spoken to her like she mattered. And that terrified her more than anything. Can Lydia survive a world she was never meant to enter? And what is Kah Chul really hiding behind those unreadable eyes? Smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you do not want to miss what happens next. This story is about to get even more dangerous. Like this video? If you're already obsessed with this forbidden romance between a waitress and a mafia boss, the next chapter drops soon, and trust me, you are not ready for what Marcus does when he finds out where Lydia is living. See you in the next one. If Lydia survives. The SUV pulled away from the curb without a sound. No screeching tires. No dramatic escape. Just a smooth, silent glide into the black arterial streets of downtown. As if the vehicle itself knew better than to draw attention to the man sitting inside it. Lydia sat pressed against the far door, her knees drawn up to her chest. Kah Chul's jacket still wrapped around her shoulders, like a cocoon she hadn't asked for. The leather seat beneath her was heated. The cabin smelled like new money and cedarwood. A partition of tinted glass separated them from the driver. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your own breathing sound obscene. Kah Chul sat on the opposite side of the back seat, not in the middle, not crowding her. He had left the entire middle section empty, a deliberate no-man's land of black leather between them. His posture was relaxed, one arm resting along the window ledge, his long legs crossed at the ankle. He was looking out the window, at the passing city lights, as if he had not just purchased a human being 20 minutes ago. Lydia's phone buzzed in the pocket of her uniform. She flinched so hard her elbow cracked against the door handle. Her fingers fumbled into her apron pocket and pulled out the cracked screen. Marcus. His name glowed white against the shattered glass. She answered before she could stop herself. Marcus, she breathed. Marcus, please. Please tell me this isn't real. Tell me you're coming. Tell me this was some kind of sick joke, and you're following behind us right now? Lydia. His voice was flat, bored almost. She could hear music in the background. A woman laughing. He was already somewhere else. Already spending. Lydia, listen to me. It's done, okay? It's done. I had no choice. You don't understand how deep I was in. These people don't play around. I did what I had to do. You sold me. The words came out of her mouth like broken glass. You sold me, Marcus. Like I was a car, a watch, a piece of furniture you didn't want anymore. Don't be dramatic. The line went dead. Lydia stared at the phone. The screen went dark. Her reflection stared back at her wide eyes, trembling lips, the collar of a powder blue uniform that now felt like a costume from a life that no longer existed. She didn't cry. She wanted to. She could feel it building behind her ribs like a dam about to crack. But something in her locked down, some survival mechanism buried so deep, she didn't even know she had it. She pressed her lips together, slid the phone back into her pocket, and stared straight ahead at the partition glass. On the other side of the seat, Kah Chul had not moved, had not looked, had not spoken. But his jaw was tighter than it had been a moment ago. And his right hand, the one resting on his knee, had curled into a slow, controlled fist. He had heard everything. They drove for 47 minutes. Lydia counted every one of them on the dashboard clock glowing through the partition. The city thinned out. The neon signs and crowded sidewalks gave way to tree-lined avenues, then iron gates, then walls. Tall walls. Stone and steel and security cameras mounted every 30 feet, their red lights blinking like the eyes of patient animals. The SUV slowed, passed through 3 separate security checkpoints, each one manned by men in dark suits, who nodded at the vehicle without a word, and finally rolled to a stop in front of a house that Lydia's brain simply refused to process. It wasn't a house. It was a fortress, dressed as a mansion, a sprawling estate of dark stone and floor-to-ceiling glass, perched on a manicured hillside like a crown on a skull. Warm light poured from every window. A stone fountain gurgled in the circular driveway. The landscaping alone probably cost more than Lydia had earned in her entire life. The door opened. Not Kah Chul's men this time. A woman mid-50s, Korean, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a neat bun and kind, tired eyes stood at the entrance, holding a folded white towel. Kah Chul stepped out of the SUV first. He buttoned his shirt cuff, said something in rapid Korean to the woman, and then turned to Lydia. He extended one hand toward the front door, not toward her. An open palm, a direction, not a demand. Mrs. Yoon will show you to your room, he said. His voice was the same low-controlled rumble from the casino, but softer now, almost careful. There are fresh clothes inside. Anything you need, you ask her. Lydia didn't move. Her fingers gripped the edge of the car seat. My room, she repeated. The words tasted wrong. You mean my cell? Something shifted in Kah Chul's expression. It was fast, a flicker of something that looked, impossibly, like pain. Then it was gone, replaced by that granite composure, Your room, he said again. Then he turned and walked into the house, disappearing down a corridor without looking back. Mrs. Yoon stepped forward. She didn't touch Lydia either. She simply bowed her head slightly and gestured with the warmth of a woman who had spent decades taking care of people. Who arrived at this house, looking exactly like Lydia, looked right now, hollowed out, and terrified. Come, dear, Mrs. Yoon said softly, in accented but perfect English. You are safe tonight. The room was not a cell. It was a master suite the size of Lydia's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over a moonlit garden where sculpted hedges and stone pathways wound between Japanese maples. The bed was enormous, white linen, a mountain of pillows, a duvet so thick it looked like a cloud had been folded in half and placed on the mattress. A marble bathroom sat beyond a frosted glass door, stocked with soaps and oils in dark glass bottles that probably cost $50 each. On the bed, laid out with careful precision, were clothes, not lingerie, not anything suggestive or degrading. A pair of soft gray joggers, a white cotton t-shirt, thick wool socks, and a cashmere cardigan, the color of cream. Beside them, a sealed toothbrush, a comb, and a small jar of shea butter moisturizer. Lydia stood in the doorway and stared at everything for a full 3 minutes. Then she locked the door, tested it, locked, from the inside. No one had a key. She pulled a chair from the vanity desk and wedged it under the handle anyway. She showered in water so hot it turned her skin pink. She scrubbed the smell of cigar smoke and bourbon and Marcus's cologne out of her hair. She stood under the rain shower head and let the heat pound into her shoulders until the trembling finally stopped. When she stepped out, she put on the joggers and the t-shirt and the cashmere cardigan, and she crawled into the center of that enormous bed, and she pulled the duvet over her head, and then she cried. She cried until her ribs ached. She cried until the pillow was soaked and cold against her face. She cried for the wedding that would never happen, for the savings account she had emptied, shift by shift, tip by tip, sliding quarters and crumpled fives into a jar on the kitchen counter, labeled, "Our Future," in her own handwriting. She cried for the girl who had believed Marcus when he said he'd stopped gambling, who had believed him when he said he loved her, who had believed that if she just worked a little harder, stayed a little longer, loved a little louder, everything would be okay. She fell asleep at 3:47 a.m. She knew because the clock on the nightstand, a sleek, silent thing with no ticking, was the last thing she saw before her eyes finally closed. 1. No one knocked. No one entered. No one came for her in the night. She woke to sunlight and the smell of food. For 5 disoriented seconds, Lydia thought she was home. Then the thread count of the sheets registered. Then the silence, no traffic noise, no neighbors arguing through thin walls, no leaking faucet in the kitchen. Then everything crashed back, and her stomach dropped like a stone in deep water. She sat up. The chair was still wedged under the door handle. On the floor, just inside the door slid through the gap at the bottom, was a folded note on thick cream paper. The handwriting was sharp and precise, each letter deliberate. Breakfast is in the main kitchen. Down the stairs, turn left. Mrs. Yoon is expecting you. Come when you are ready. KC. Lydia read it 3 times. Come when you are ready. Not, come now. Not, you are expected. When you are ready. She got dressed in yesterday's fresh clothes, splashed water on her face, and opened the door. The hallway was wide, hardwood floors polished to a mirror shine, lined with paintings she was sure she had seen in art history textbooks. She descended a curved staircase and turned left. The kitchen was enormous. Industrial-grade stainless steel meets warm butcher block wood, and Mrs. Yoon was standing at the stove, flipping something that smelled like heaven. A full breakfast was already laid out on the kitchen island. Eggs, fresh fruit, toast, rice, soup, orange juice, and coffee. Enough food for 4 people. Sit, Mrs. Yoon said, pulling out a stool. You need to eat. Lydia sat. She ate because her body demanded it, not because she felt safe. Every few seconds her eyes darted to the doorways, the windows, the exits. That was when Kah Chul walked in. He looked different in the morning light. The suit was gone. He wore a simple black crew-neck sweater and dark trousers, his hair slightly less sculpted than the night before. Without the suit jacket and the dim casino lighting, he looked younger, almost human. The neck tattoo was still there. Of course, a permanent reminder that almost human was doing a lot of heavy lifting. He didn't sit down. He stood on the opposite side of the island, poured himself a cup of black coffee, and placed something on the counter between them. A leather bag, unzipped, packed tight with banded stacks of cash. Beside it, a passport. Her passport. Lydia hadn't even realized it was missing from her apartment. There's $50,000 in that bag, Kah Chul said, his voice flat and direct. No theater. No performance. Enough to get you a plane ticket anywhere in the world, put a deposit on an apartment, and live for 6 months while you figure out your next move. Lydia stopped chewing. A piece of toast sat frozen halfway to her mouth. The passport is yours. I had someone retrieve it from your apartment last night, along with your social security card and birth certificate. Everything you need to start over is in that bag. He took a sip of coffee. His eyes met hers over the rim, and for the first time, she saw something behind the granite, something that looked like quiet, deliberate honesty. I didn't buy you to keep you, he said. I bought you because I have watched that man humiliate you for weeks. Every game night, I watched him drag you in to serve drinks to men who looked at you like meat, and I watched you smile through it, because you loved him and you believed he would change. He set the cup down. He was never going to change. And last night, when he put you on the table like a stack of chips, I decided the fastest way to get you away from him was to take the deal. Silence. The kitchen clock ticked. Mrs. Yoon had quietly disappeared. You're free to go, Lydia, Kah Chul said. Right now. The front gate will open for you. There is a car waiting outside that will take you wherever you want. You owe me nothing. This is not a debt. This is not a trick. You walk out that door, and you never have to see me or think about me again. He straightened up, set his coffee cup in the sink, and walked out of the kitchen without waiting for an answer. Lydia sat alone at the island for 22 minutes. She counted the money. Twice. She held her passport and ran her thumb over her own photograph, a younger version of herself, smiling, taken 3 years ago, when she still believed good things were coming. Then she picked up the bag and walked toward the front door. She made it 4 blocks. The car Kah Chul had promised was a black sedan with tinted windows, driven by a silent man who asked no questions. He dropped her at a bank in Midtown at her request. Lydia walked through the glass doors with her chin up and her hands steady and asked the teller to pull up her checking and savings accounts. The teller's face told her everything before the screen did. Checking, $0. Savings, $0. Joint credit card, maxed. Second credit card, the emergency one, she kept hidden in her sock drawer, maxed. There was a pending collection notice from a payday lender she had never borrowed from. Marcus had opened it in her name. Her credit score, which she had spent 6 years building from nothing, was destroyed. She walked out of the bank on legs made of concrete. She sat down on a bench outside and called her landlord. The locks to her apartment had been changed that morning. Marcus had broken the lease 2 weeks ago and forged her signature. Her belongings, what was left of them, were in a storage unit that required a $200 fee she no longer had access to. She called her sister in Baltimore. No answer. She called her best friend. The number had been disconnected 3 months ago, and she hadn't even noticed because Marcus had slowly, methodically, quietly cut every lifeline she had. Then her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "Hey, baby. Heard you're out. I got people who will pay double what Chul paid. Real money this time. Let me know where you are. We can work something out." Mia, Lydia's blood turned to ice. She read the message 3 times. Then she read it a 4th time to make sure the nausea she felt was real and not a hallucination born of the worst 48 hours of her life. Marcus wasn't done. Marcus wasn't sorry. Marcus was shopping her around to someone worse. She sat on that bench for 11 minutes. The leather bag full of Kah Chul's cash sat heavy on her lap. $50,000. Enough to run. Enough to disappear into another city, another state, another name. She could vanish. She could start over. But start over as what? A woman with no credit, no apartment, no references, no safety net, and an ex-fiancé actively advertising her location to the highest bidder? She would be running for the rest of her life, running from Marcus, running from whoever Marcus owed next. Running until the money ran out, and then she would be right back where she started, alone, broke, and one bad night away from being someone else's transaction. Or, she pulled out her phone. She turned over the note. Kah Chul had slid under her door that morning, the one she had folded into her pocket without thinking, the way a waitress pockets a receipt. On the back, beneath the breakfast instructions, was a phone number. No name, just 10 digits in that same sharp, precise handwriting. She dialed. It rang once. "Lydia." Kah Chul's voice answered on the second ring. Not surprised, not smug, just her name, spoken like a fact. "He emptied everything," she said. Her voice was steady now. Not strong steady. The voice of a woman who had just walked to the edge of a cliff, looked down, and decided to step back. "My accounts, my apartment, my credit, everything. He's already trying to sell me again, to someone else." Silence on the line. But not empty silence. The kind of silence that meant someone was listening with their entire body. "I'm not coming back because I trust you," Lydia said. "I'm coming back because right now, you are the only door that isn't locked. And I need you to understand that. I am not yours. I am not grateful. I am surviving. That's it." A pause. Then, so quiet she almost missed it. "The car never left. Look to your right." She turned her head. The black sedan was idled at the end of the block, exactly where it had dropped her off. The driver hadn't moved. He had been waiting the entire time. Lydia closed her eyes, drew one long breath. Then she stood up, walked to the car, and got in. She didn't unpack that first week. She kept her things, what little she had, in the leather bag, zipped and ready by the bedroom door like a soldier sleeping in her boots. She wore the clothes, missus. Yoon left out for her each morning, ate the meals placed on the kitchen island at precise intervals, and spent the rest of her hours doing what she had done her entire adult life. Watching. People don't notice waitresses. That was the first rule Lydia had learned when she started working at 17 bussing tables at a diner in East Baltimore, with sticky floors and a cook who never learned her name. You carry the tray, you refill the glass, you clear the plate, and you become invisible. A piece of furniture with a pulse. And when you are invisible, you see everything. She saw things at Kah Chul's estate that his own people didn't see. She noticed that the tall guard who stood post at the east gate, a thick-necked man named Dae-ho, always checked his phone at exactly 11:15 p.m., the same time every night, and that after he checked it, he would leave his post for 6 minutes. Always 6. She noticed because a waitress counts time, the way a pilot watches altitude constantly and without thinking. She noticed that Kah Chul's accountant, a thin, nervous man named Mr. Park, brought documents to the study every Tuesday and Thursday at 3 p.m., but that on his last 3 visits, his left hand trembled when he handed over the folders. Not the right. The left. The hand closest to his body. The hand that was hiding something. She noticed that one of Kah Chul's most trusted lieutenants, a broad-shouldered man everyone called June, had started wearing cologne. Not expensive cologne. Cheap cologne, the kind you buy at a gas station to cover a smell. And the smell he was covering wasn't sweat or food. It was cigarette smoke. A specific brand. Lydia had served enough smokers to recognize it from 3 feet away. SE Lights. A Korean brand. The same brand she had seen stacked behind the bar at a rival boss's club 2 months ago when she had pulled a catering shift for extra cash. June didn't smoke. June had never smoked. But someone June was spending time with did. She filed these things away the way she had always filed. Drink orders silently. Automatically. In a mental cabinet that never forgot a face, a name, or a pattern. 2 weeks in, she couldn't hold it anymore. Kah Chul was in his study, the one room in the house that always smelled like old books and black tea. He was reading something on his laptop, his reading glasses perched on his nose, a detail that made the fearsome Mafia boss look. For 3 absurd seconds, like a university professor grading essays. Lydia knocked on the open door. He looked up. "Your man June," she said, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. "He's meeting with someone outside your organization, someone who smokes SE Lights. He's been doing it for at least 2 weeks, probably longer. He comes back smelling like it and douses himself in gas station cologne before he walks through the front door. He thinks no one notices." Kah Chul took off his glasses. Slowly, he set them on the desk. His expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes recalibrated, like a scope clicking into focus. "And your man Daeho leaves the East Gate unmanned for 6 minutes every night at 11:15. Every single night. Like clockwork. Whatever he's checking on that phone, it's not his girlfriend, because no one checks their phone with that kind of discipline unless someone is telling them when to move." She paused. "And Mr.?" Park's hands shake when he hands you documents now. They didn't shake a month ago. I know because I bring him tea every Thursday, and I watch his grip on the cup. A month ago. Steady. Now, the left hand trembles. He's either scared of something or hiding something, and in my experience, it's usually both. The study was silent. Kah Chul stared at her. Not through her at her. The same intense, unreadable focus from the casino, but different now. There was no granite, no wall. For the first time since she had met him, Lydia saw something unguarded cross his face. It was surprise, not the small, polite kind, the deep kind. The kind that happens when you've been looking at the world one way for years, and someone walks in and shows you a door you didn't know existed. "How long have you been watching my people?" he asked quietly. "Since the first morning," she said. "It's what I do. It's the only thing I've ever been good at. People look through me, and I look into them." He leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled under his chin. He studied her for a long, weighted moment, the kind of silence that has its own gravity. "Every boss in this city has soldiers," Kah Chul said finally. "They have guns. They have money. They have lawyers and politicians and judges on speed dial." He paused. "Not one of them has someone who sees what you see." Lydia said nothing. She didn't need to. For the first time in as long as she could remember, someone had looked at the thing she was best at, the quiet, invisible, thankless skill of watching, and called it exactly what it was. Valuable. She turned to leave. At the doorway, she stopped. "You should check June's phone first," she said over her shoulder. "If I'm right about the cigarettes, you'll find the rest." She walked back to her room, sat on the edge of the bed, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in 2 weeks. She didn't know it yet, but that conversation had just shifted something fundamental in the architecture of Kah Chul's empire. The invisible waitress had just made herself the most dangerous person in the house, not because she could fight, not because she could shoot, but because she could see what no one else bothered to look for. And Kah Chul, the man the whole city feared, was only just beginning to understand what he had brought through his front door. Do you think Lydia should trust Kah Chul? Or is she walking into something even worse than Marcus? Like this video, if you're already hooked on this dangerous love story that keeps pulling you deeper. The next chapter drops soon. And trust me, you are not ready for who the real traitor inside Kah Chul's empire turns out to be. See you in the next one. If Lydia's instincts don't get her killed first. Kah Chul found June's second phone, 40 minutes after Lydia left his study. It was taped inside the lining of a gym bag in the guards' quarters. A cheap burner with no contacts saved. Just a single thread of encrypted messages to a number that, when traced, pinged off a cell tower 6 blocks from the headquarters of Sang-Woo Lee, the head of a rival syndicate that had been circling Kah Chul's territory for the better part of 2 years. By midnight, June was gone. Not dead? Lydia asked, and Kah Chul answered honestly, which surprised them both. June was handed over to a crew in Busan who owed Kah Chul a favor. He would spend the rest of his career guarding a fish processing plant on the coast of South Korea. A demotion so humiliating, it was worse than anything a bullet could accomplish. Daeho broke within an hour of questioning. He had been paid $15,000 a month to leave the East Gate open for exactly 6 minutes every night, long enough for a surveillance drone to map the estate's patrol routes from the air. The drone belonged to Sang-Woo Lee's people. They had been photographing every inch of the compound for weeks. Mr. Park, the trembling accountant, turned out to be the least sinister of the three. He wasn't a traitor. He was being blackmailed. Sang-Woo's men had photographs of his daughter at her university in Seoul. And they had made it very clear what would happen if he didn't start skimming small amounts from Kah Chul's accounts to fund their operations. When Kah Chul brought him into the study and laid the evidence on the desk, Mr. Park collapsed into a chair and wept. Kah Chul made 2 phone calls. Within the hour, Mr. Park's daughter had a security detail, and Mr. Park had a second chance he didn't expect. All of this because a waitress noticed cheap cologne. The morning after the purge, Kah Chul found Lydia in the kitchen, standing at the counter with a cup of coffee, reading a Korean newspaper she couldn't understand because she liked looking at the photographs. He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her. She was wearing the cream cashmere cardigan again, her favorite, though she would never admit it, and her hair was down for the first time since she had arrived. It fell past her shoulders in soft, dark waves, and the morning light through the kitchen window caught her profile in a way that made him forget, briefly, how to form a sentence. 3 moles, he said from the doorway. 3 compromises in my inner circle. My head of security missed it. My intelligence team missed it. 17 armed men who are paid to notice threats missed it. He paused. You caught all 3 in 2 weeks. And you did it by watching how a man holds a teacup. Lydia set her coffee down. I also did it by noticing what brand of cigarettes someone else smokes. Don't sell the cigarettes short. The corner of his mouth moved. It wasn't a smile, not quite. It was the ghost of one, the kind that escapes before the person realizes it's happening. On a face as controlled as Kah Chul's, it was the equivalent of a standing ovation. I don't need a waitress anymore, he said. He stepped into the kitchen and stood on the opposite side of the island, the same position he always took, close enough to talk, far enough to respect. I need a partner, someone who sees what I miss, someone my enemies won't expect. I'm not joining your mafia, Kah Chul. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to sit at the table, not to serve drinks, to sit. The kitchen was quiet. The coffee machine gurgled. Somewhere outside, a gardener's shears clicked rhythmically against a hedge. Lydia looked at him. Really looked at him. For what felt like the first time, without fear filtering her vision. She saw the dark circles under his eyes that he hid with posture and composure. She saw the way his hands rested on the counter, palms down, open, like a man who was tired of holding everything with a closed fist. She saw the tattoo on his neck, and for the first time, it didn't look like a warning. It looked like a scar. A story written in ink instead of words, because the man who wore it had never been allowed to say it out loud. "If I sit at that table," she said slowly, "I have a voice, a real one, not a decorative one. If I see something, I say it, and you listen. You don't pat me on the head and send me back to my room. You don't filter things to protect me. I get the full picture, or I get nothing. Done. And I'm not yours, not a possession, not a trophy, not a kept woman in a pretty house. I'm there because I choose to be. The second I want to leave, I leave. No questions, no locked gates. The gate has never been locked for you, Lydia. It never will be." She studied his face for the lie. She looked for the micro-expressions she had spent a lifetime cataloging, the slight tightening around the eyes, the almost imperceptible shift in breathing, the way a liar's gaze drifts, left for a fraction of a second. She found nothing. His eyes held hers with the kind of stillness that only comes from someone telling the absolute, undecorated truth. She picked up her coffee, took a slow sip, set it down. "Okay," she said. "Then I'll sit." Neither of them moved for a long moment. The morning light shifted. The gardener's shears went quiet. And then Kah Chul did something he had never done in the presence of another person for as long as anyone in his organization could remember. He exhaled. Not the controlled, measured breath of a man managing his composure. A real exhale. The kind that comes from the bottom of your lungs when a weight you've been carrying so long you forgot it was there suddenly lifts. Lydia heard it, and something inside her, something that had been braced for impact since the night Marcus sold her unclenched. She walked around the island. He didn't step back. She stopped in front of him, close enough to see the faint silver thread in the black of his eyes, close enough to feel the warmth radiating off his chest. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for buying me, for letting me go, for letting me come back." He looked down at her. His hand came up slowly, deliberately, giving her every chance to step away, and he brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingertips grazed her temple, and she felt it everywhere. "You came back on your own," he murmured. "That's the only part that mattered to me." She kissed him. Not gently, not carefully. She kissed him the way a woman kisses when she is done, being afraid of wanting something. When every wall she built to survive has been standing so long, she forgot what was on the other side. She reached up, pulled him down by the collar of his sweater, and pressed her mouth against his with a fierceness that surprised them both. He kissed her back. One hand cradled the back of her head. The other found her waist and pulled her closer, not roughly, but completely. As if the empty space between them was a problem he had been solving for weeks, and the answer had finally arrived. When they pulled apart, Lydia's heart was hammering so loud, she was sure Mrs. Yoon could hear it from the other room. Kah Chul's composure was gone. Completely. His lips were slightly parted, his breathing uneven, and in his dark eyes was something Lydia had never seen in all her weeks of watching him. Vulnerability. "Well," Lydia said, her voice unsteady, "that's going to make the partnership complicated." The ghost smile returned. This time, it stayed. Marcus came back 5 weeks later, because men like Marcus always come back. He showed up at the front gate of Kah Chul's estate at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, wearing a wrinkled suit he couldn't afford and a confidence he hadn't earned. The security cameras picked him up 300 yards from the perimeter, and by the time he reached the intercom, 4 men had rifles trained on his chest from positions he couldn't see. Lydia was in Kah Chul's study when the call came through. She was sitting across from him at the desk. Her desk now, technically, since he had cleared half of it for her files, reviewing the weekly security reports, with a red pen and a cup of green tea. She had settled into the role with a precision that still caught Kah Chul off guard. Her observation logs were meticulous. Her instincts were sharper than those of men who had been in the organization for decades. She read people the way other people read weather, constantly, effortlessly, and with an accuracy that bordered on unsettling. The intercom buzzed, a guard's voice, tight and clipped. "Sir, there is a man at the gate. He says he is here to collect his property." He asked for the woman by name. Lydia's red pen stopped moving. Kah Chul's expression didn't change, but his hand, the one resting on the desk, went very, very still. "Let me see him," Lydia said. She pulled up the security feed on the laptop. There he was, Marcus, leaning against the intercom post with his arms crossed, chewing gum, looking up at the camera with the smug grin of a man who believed the universe still owed him something. "I know you can hear me," Marcus said into the intercom, loud enough for the microphone to distort. "I want to talk, man to man. Tell your boss I've got a proposition. And tell Lydia that if she doesn't want me going to the police about a little thing called human trafficking, she should come out here and have a conversation with the man who still has her engagement ring receipt in his wallet." Kah Chul stood up, slowly, the way a blade rises from a sheath. "Don't." Lydia's voice cut through the room like a wire. "That's what he wants. He wants a reaction. He wants to feel important. He feeds on it." She stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the monitor feed with the detachment of a surgeon studying a scan. "He's broke again," she said calmly. "Look at his shoes. The soles are separating. That suit hasn't been dry cleaned in weeks. He's not here because he has power. He's here because he's out of options, and he thinks I'm still the easiest one to exploit." She paused. "He'll threaten the police, but he won't call them. He can't. The second the police start asking questions about that poker game, they'll find out about the 7 other debts he owes to people who make you look like a kindergarten teacher." "He's bluffing." Kah Chul looked at her. Then he picked up the intercom receiver. "You have 30 seconds to leave this property," he said, his voice carrying the flat, absolute calm of a man who is not making a threat, but stating a natural law. "If you contact Lydia again, by phone, by letter, by proxy, or by showing up at my gate, I will dismantle every remaining piece of your life so thoroughly that you will not be able to open a checking account in any country that has electricity. You have 22 seconds left." Marcus's grin flickered, then disappeared. He stared at the camera for 8 more seconds, spat his gum on the ground, and walked away. But Lydia watched the feed until he was out of range, and she noticed something the cameras almost missed. As Marcus walked back toward the road, he pulled out a phone, not his usual phone, a different one, and made a call. His body language shifted. The defeated slouch vanished. He stood straighter. He nodded. He looked back at the estate one more time, and this time his expression wasn't smug, it was calculating. "He's not leaving," Lydia said quietly. "He's reporting." The call came 3 days later. A meeting. Neutral territory. A warehouse in the industrial district. Requested by a mid-level broker who claimed to have information about Sang-Woo Lee's next move. Kah Chul's intelligence team vetted the broker and cleared the location. Everything looked clean. Lydia didn't trust it. She couldn't explain why. Not with evidence, not with logic, not with the kind of concrete proof that Kah Chul's men would respect. It was a feeling. The same feeling she used to get at the restaurant when a table of 4 ordered expensive wine and no food. The feeling that said, something is about to go sideways, and the only question is how fast. "The timing is wrong," she told Kah Chul the night before the meeting. They were in his bedroom, their bedroom now, though neither of them had officially named it that. She was sitting cross-legged on the bed with her laptop open, scrolling through 3 weeks of security logs. Marcus shows up at the gate on Tuesday. By Friday, A mystery broker materializes with perfect intel? That's not coincidence. That's a relay. Kah Chul sat on the edge of the bed, lacing his shoes. He listened, the way he always listened to her completely, with his whole body angled in her direction. If I don't go, I look weak. Sang-woo reads hesitation as vulnerability. I skip one meeting, and by next week he's testing the perimeter instead of sending brokers. Then go, Lydia said, but take the full detail, every man you can spare, and leave me the security codes. He turned to look at her. Lydia, if this is a feint, if the meeting is the distraction, and the real target is this house, I need to be able to lock it down. You built this estate like a fortress. Let me use it like one. He studied her for a long moment. Then he reached into his nightstand, pulled out a slim black tablet, and handed it to her. The screen displayed the full security grid, every camera, every lock, every alarm, every panic room, every reinforced door in the compound. Mrs. Yoon knows the service corridors, he said. The ones that aren't on the main blueprints. If anything happens, you go to her first. She'll get you to the panic room. He leaned over and kissed her forehead, then her lips. Then he stood up, buttoned his jacket, and walked out. Lydia watched his SUV pull through the front gate from the bedroom window. She counted the vehicles in the convoy 4. She counted the men 16. She watched until the taillights disappeared around the bend. Then she opened the security tablet, sat down at the desk, and began memorizing every corridor, every blind spot, every failsafe in the system. 47 minutes later, the East Gate camera went dark. They came in fast and quiet. 12 men, black tactical gear, no insignia. They cut through the east perimeter, the same gate Daeho used to leave open, the same vulnerability the surveillance drone had mapped for weeks before Lydia exposed it. The gate had been reinforced since then, but someone had fed the new codes to the wrong people, someone on the outside. Someone who had stood at this gate 3 days ago and reported back to his handlers with a calculating look on his face. Marcus. Lydia saw them on the secondary camera feed before the main system even registered the breach. She was already moving. She grabbed the tablet, slid her feet into the flat shoes she had started keeping by the desk, a waitress habit, always ready to move, and ran. Not toward the front door, not toward the panic room, toward the kitchen. Mrs. Yoon was standing at the sink, drying a pot. She took one look at Lydia's face and set the pot down without a word. Service corridor, Lydia said. Now. Mrs. Yoon moved with the efficiency of a woman who had lived in this house for 20 years and had been preparing for a night like this since the day she arrived. She pressed a panel behind the pantry shelf, and a narrow door swung inward, revealing a passageway barely wide enough for 2 people to walk side by side. The corridor was unlit, concrete, and cold, built into the bones of the house like a secret artery. Go left, then down, Mrs. Yoon whispered. It leads to the lower level. The panic room is at the end. I'm not going to the panic room yet, Lydia said. She held up the tablet. I'm going to the server junction. Where does this corridor connect to the security hub? Mrs. Yoon stared at her for 2 seconds. Then she nodded. Right, then up. Second door on your left. The lock code is 8814. Lydia squeezed the older woman's hand once hard and disappeared into the dark. She navigated the corridors from memory. Not the blueprints Kah Chul had shown her, the mental map she had been building since her first week, walking the house at odd hours, counting steps, noting which doors squeaked and which stayed silent, memorizing the layout the way she had memorized table numbers and drink orders for 15 years. Left, right, 14 steps, duck under the low beam, second door. The security hub was a small room packed with servers and monitors. Lydia locked the door behind her, powered up the main console, and pulled up every camera in the estate. 12 men were moving through the east wing. 2 more had split off toward the bedrooms. 1 was heading for the study. They were searching room by room, kicking open doors, sweeping with military precision. They weren't here to rob. They weren't here to threaten. They were here for her. Lydia's hands were shaking. She allowed herself 3 seconds to feel the terror. Really feel it? Let it crash through her like a wave. And then she locked it away in the same place she used. To lock away the humiliation of being called honey by drunk men who snapped their fingers for refills. She went to work. The estate's security system was built in layers. Kah Chul had designed it that way. Redundancy upon redundancy, because a man with his enemies could not afford a single point of failure. Lydia accessed the first layer, electromagnetic door locks. With 3 taps on the tablet, she sealed every door in the east wing simultaneously. The invaders, spread across 6 rooms, were suddenly trapped in individual cells of their own making. She heard the distant, muffled sound of fists hammering against reinforced steel. Second layer, the corridor gates. Heavy steel barriers hidden in the ceiling that dropped like guillotines when activated. She sealed the 3 main hallways connecting the east wing to the rest of the house, cutting off any retreat. Third layer, the alarm. Not the police alarm, the internal one. A frequency that pinged every phone on Kah Chul's network simultaneously. She activated it and typed a single message into the system broadcast. Estate compromised. 12 hostiles east wing. Contained. Come home. Then she picked up the tablet, left the security hub, and navigated the service corridors to the panic room. Mrs. Yoon was already inside, sitting calmly on a reinforced bench with a cup of tea she had somehow managed to bring with her. Lydia sealed the panic room door, 8 inches of steel, and sat down beside her. "You are very good at this," Mrs. Yoon said, taking a sip. "I've been clearing difficult tables my whole life," Lydia said. "These ones just happen to carry guns." Kah Chul arrived 23 minutes later. The meeting had been a trap the broker never showed, and the warehouse was empty. A distraction, exactly as Lydia had predicted. He had turned the convoy around the moment her alert hit his phone, breaking every speed limit between the industrial district and his front gate. He entered the panic room with 3 of his men, his suit jacket gone, his sleeves rolled up, a loaded weapon in his right hand. His eyes found Lydia first. Before the door, before the monitors, before anything else in the room, she stood up. 12 men, east wing, all contained. The corridor gates are down. None of them made it past the kitchen. Your system held. He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into him, not a kiss. Not yet. Just his arms around her, his chin against the top of her head, his chest expanding with a breath that shuddered on the way out. He held her like a man, confirming that the most important thing in his world was still standing. Then he let go, picked up the tablet, and went to work. His men extracted the invaders one by one. The operation took 2 hours. When it was done, 11 of the 12 were in custody. The 12th had talked quickly, desperately, offering up every detail of the operation in exchange for mercy. He confirmed what Lydia already knew. Marcus had sold Kah Chul's updated security codes to Sang-Woo Lee's crew for $75,000, and the promise of a cut of whatever they took from the estate. Marcus himself was found hiding in a van, 2 blocks from the perimeter, engine running, waiting for his payday. They brought him into the main hall and sat him in a chair under the chandelier. Lydia walked in last. Marcus looked up at her. His suit was torn. His face was pale. His hands were zip-tied behind the chair, and for the first time since she had known him, the arrogance was gone. In its place was the raw, animal terror of a man who had finally run out of people to sell. "Lydia," he said. His voice cracked on the second syllable. Baby, listen. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was just trying to..." You know I love you, right? You know I always loved you. I made mistakes, okay? I made mistakes, but you can't let him, please. Please, Lydia. Tell him to let me go. I'll disappear. You'll never see me again. I swear. I swear on everything. Lydia stood in front of him. She looked at the man who had proposed to her with a ring he bought with her own money. The man who had whispered, "I love you," while draining their savings account into a poker game. The man who had pushed her forward by the small of her back and said, "She's yours. Take her," with the same inflection someone uses to pass the salt. She felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, not satisfaction, nothing. He was a closed chapter in a language she no longer spoke. "Goodbye, Marcus," she said. Then she turned her back and walked out of the room. She didn't ask what happened after that. She didn't need to. 3 months passed. The estate was repaired. The security grid was rebuilt from the ground up, this time with Lydia's input woven into every layer. Sang-Woo Lee's organization, exposed and crippled by the failed raid, fractured within weeks. Kah Chul's territory was secure. His people were loyal, truly loyal now, because the purge Lydia had initiated had cut the rot out at the root. Lydia changed too. Not all at once. Not in the dramatic, cinematic way that stories like to pretend transformation works. It happened in small, quiet shifts, the way she started walking through the estate with her shoulders back instead of hunched, the way she stopped keeping her bag packed by the door, the way she began referring to the bedroom as ours instead of the room, the way she laughed a real laugh, full-bodied and unguarded the first time Mrs. Yoon told her a story about Kah Chul as a teenager, and Kah Chul walked in and turned the exact shade of red that a feared Mafia boss should never turn. She wasn't a waitress anymore. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't a woman defined by what had been done to her. She was Lydia Babcock, sharp-eyed, steady-handed, fluent in the silent language of human behavior, and she had chosen, freely and completely, to stand beside a man who had never once asked her to be anything other than exactly what she was. On a Tuesday morning in October, Kah Chul asked her to come to the garden. The garden was her favorite place on the estate. She had told him this once, casually, months ago, while they were walking the grounds after dinner. She mentioned that the Japanese maples reminded her of a park near her grandmother's house in Baltimore, the only place she had ever felt completely safe as a child. She didn't think he was listening. He was always listening. He was standing beneath the largest maple, wearing a simple white shirt, no suit, no armor, no role, just him. The morning light filtered through the red and gold leaves and scattered across his face in patterns that made him look, for one unguarded moment, like a man who had never carried a weapon in his life. Lydia walked toward him, her bare feet cool against the stone path. She was wearing the cream cashmere cardigan, the first piece of clothing he had ever given her, the one she had never stopped wearing. "You're being very mysterious for a Tuesday," she said. He didn't smile. His expression was open, in a way she had only seen in private, in the dark, in the moments after the armor came off and the man underneath finally breathed. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black box. Lydia stopped walking. "This is not a transaction," Kah Chul said. His voice was steady, but his hands, for the first time in her memory, were not. "This is not a claim. This is not a contract or a negotiation or a power move." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single stone set in a band of white gold that caught the light like a quiet promise. "This is me asking. Just asking. And you can say no, and the gate will still never be locked, and the desk will still be half yours, and I will still—" "Yes." He stopped, blinked. For a man who controlled an empire with a whisper, he looked, in that moment, like he had been hit by a bus. You didn't let me finish. You were rambling. You never ramble. It was making me nervous. She stepped forward and held out her left hand. Yes, Kah Chul. The answer is yes. He slid the ring onto her finger. His hands were still trembling. She covered them with her own and held them steady. Then she kissed him under the maple tree, in the garden that reminded her of the only safe place she had ever known. And she realized with a clarity that hit her so hard, it stole her breath, that she wasn't remembering safety anymore. She was standing in it. Mrs. Yoon watched from the kitchen window, dabbing her eyes with a dish towel. She had known this was coming for weeks. She was a woman who noticed things too. That evening, Lydia sat at her desk in the study, her half of the desk, the half with the red pens and the green tea and the security logs arranged in color-coded folders, and she looked at the ring on her finger. She turned her hand slowly, watching the stone catch the lamplight. 6 months ago, she had been a waitress working a double shift to pay for a wedding to a man who was already calculating her price. 6 months ago, she had been invisible to Marcus, to the world, to herself. 6 months ago, the most valuable thing about her, according to the man who claimed to love her, was that she could be traded for a stack of $100 bills. Now she sat in the house of the most powerful man in the city. Not as property, not as a trophy. As the woman who saw what no one else could see, who turned invisibility into a weapon, who walked into a world of darkness and found against every odd, against every expectation, against every cruel lesson life had taught her, that the most dangerous man in the room was the one who saw her clearly and loved her anyway. She closed the security log. She picked up her cup of tea. She leaned back in her chair and looked across the desk at Kah Chul, who was reading something on his laptop, with his glasses perched on his nose again, his brow furrowed in concentration, looking once more like that university professor who had accidentally wandered into the wrong career. "Hey," she said. He looked up. "Thank you for buying me." He took off his glasses. "Thank you for being worth more than I could ever afford," she smiled. He smiled back, the full one, the real one, the one that only she had ever seen. Outside, the maple leaves turned gold in the fading light, and the estate fortress, sanctuary, home, settled into the quiet hum of an evening where, for the first time in a very long time, nothing was wrong, nothing was broken, and no one was running. Drop a comment. Did Marcus get what he deserved, or should Lydia have handled him differently? Like this video, if that proposal under the maple tree just wrecked you the way it wrecked me. Share this with someone who needs to hear that the person the world overlooks might just be the one who saves everything. See you in the next story. Long live the Queen.